Awesome. All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Márton Braun. I work as an Android developer advocate for Stream. And today I'm going to show you how to use Git within Android Studio. I have to confess that I'm not some crazy Git expert. I don't know how to do all of the complex things in Git from the command line or anything like that. But I do use Git all day for my day-to-day work, and I do it all with Android Studio. And I also use just IntelliJ and the same Git tools to manage other repos because I find it so powerful and so convenient. So I want to show you how to do that. If you want to follow me, by the way, you can do that on Twitter. And you can also find all kinds of info about the talks and things that I do on my website. So with that out of the way, I'm going to use a project for this because we do need something to work with. And I'm going to be using the project that I work on day to day, which is the Stream Chat Android SDK. This is an open source chat SDK, and I just have it cloned here from GitHub. So that's what we're going to be using for the examples. And we're going to start by just looking at the basics of Git. So first of all, if you're in a project which is inside a Git repository, then you can open the Git panel, which is down here on the bottom. You can either click that, or you can use Alt-9 to open the panel with a shortcut. And within that panel, you can browse the history of your repository, right? So on the left-hand side, there's this area which is the branch browser. By the way, you can collapse this if you don't use it. And first of all, you can check out your local branches, and then all of your remote branches are there as well. Now, if you're using some kind of convention for your branch naming, so if you have feature branches as a prefix, or POC branches or something like that, you can actually show those prefixes as folders by using this icon on the left, which is group by directory. So if I do that, I now have a feature folder, or I now have a POC folder, and I can use these to have my branches more organized. Okay, moving on, in the middle, we have the log, of course. So this shows all commits on all branches and how they're interwoven. So you can pretty much do everything in the Git repository from this log view. You can filter this in various ways by the options that are here on the top. So you can, for example, select some branch and show only commits that are present in that single branch if you want to do that. You can also filter by user, where you can select any other user or just yourself, which is the currently configured user in Git on your local machine. You can also filter by date, where again you have some quick filters, or you can go completely custom. And I want to show you this just because it's really fascinating that probably some of the most ancient UI of Android Studio is in here with these broken arrow icons and all of that. So yeah, really exciting date picker, but simple functionality. So if I put in something here, I can filter commits, and I'll only see commits after that certain date. A more exciting filter is the paths filter. So you can choose select in tree within that menu. And now you can choose a portion of your repository that you're interested in the changes. So for example, if I want to see commits that have touched our new Jetpack Compose module, I can select just this folder, hit OK. And now I will only see commits in the log that relate to that folder. So if I click one of these, you'll see that the view on the right-hand side updates, which of course shows the changed files here, and then the commit details down here on the bottom. And for all of these commits that are now here, you're going to see that there are some changes in the compose module. So this is a really useful way to take a look at what happened in just one specific part of your project. You can also do something similar by starting this from the project view. So if I want to see all of the commits that have changed our documentation, for example, I can right-click the folder where we store the documentation. I can do Git and show history. And this will open a new tab within the Git window of Android Studio. And it will show me the changes or the commits that have changed that folder. So now if I go through this, you'll see that all of these commits are making updates in the Docusaurus folder, something related to our documentation. And you can also do this for single files. So I can search for something such as our changelog, which is our release notes basically in the repository. And if you invoke show history, which is one of these basic Git actions that's even up there on the toolbar, or you can just do this with action search, which is Control-Shift-A, and then typing in show history. So if you do that, you're also going to get a new tab within the Git window. And now you'll see all the commits that have affected the current file. And as you go through these, you'll see the specific changes in just that one file from these commits. But you can, of course, always right-click these commits and find them in the main Git log. You can either do that by copying the revision number and looking it up later, or you can just right-click and use show in Git log. So that would bring you back to the main Git log view. And here on the right-hand side, you could check out everything else that was changed in the same commit that has modified the changelog. And as I mentioned, you can also search for Git hashes. So if I paste from my clipboard the hash that I just copied previously and I search for that, that's going to filter the log to just the single commit. And of course, I can also use this search here to filter for something like room, so that I'll find all commit messages that have that word in their name. Right. What else is interesting about the Git log? We can change a bunch of view options, which I'm not going to go through. Something that's probably worth mentioning is that you can toggle some columns. By default, I believe the hashes are not shown as a column, so you can enable that to always have those Git hashes there to quickly reference them. Something else you can also do here is you can take a look at files as they are in a given point in time in Git history. So let's say that I want to check out what a file contains on the develop branch, but I don't actually want to switch branches because that is like a very involved process. So in order to do that, I can click on this commit, which is the current head of develop. I can choose Show Repository at Revision, and that will open a new tab on the left-hand side here called Repositories, right next to Project View. And it's actually a view that's very similar to the Project View, except it's more of a flat directory structure. And within here, I can browse files and the contents of the repository as they are at the specific hash. So you can see here on the top that we're browsing the repository at that revision. And for example, I can also open files here. And again, when I open the file on the tab on the top here, you'll see that I'm looking at this file as it is at the specific Git revision. And I can just browse these files inside Android Studio with all of the tooling available here. So syntax highlighting and all of that. And if I need to grab something as it was in the previous state, or I just want to cross-reference something with what I'm doing now, this is really useful. And I don't have to do it on GitHub where I don't have navigation or syntax highlighting. And I also don't have to, again, change branches and lose my current context for this. So that's really cool. Something else you probably want to do often is compare branches. So I have this branch here that I'm currently on, some feature branch where I'm making some changes. And if I want to compare the state of my repository on this branch with develop, for example, I can right click on that and I can use compare with local, which will give me this list of files that have been changed, comparing between the two revisions. And if I double click any of these files, or I just select a file and I hit Control D on it, which is D for diff, then I'll be able to check out all of the changes with Android Studio's really neat diff view like that. Okay, so I think that's the overview of the Git history panel. Now let's take a look at some other things that you can do related to Git. So a lot of these things I tend to use from Action Search. So again, just Control-Shift-A brings up this Action Search in Android Studio, or it's Shift-Command-A if you're on a Mac. And this is really powerful. You can pretty much invoke any command in Android Studio from here, including Git. So if you want to do something like fetch, which would update the information that you have about remote branches and the commits that you have on your remote, then you could just do action search, type in fetch, hit enter, and that would perform the Git action. Or you could do, for example, you can switch branches with this. You can type in branches, select that, and it will open the branch switcher. This switcher, by the way, is also available down here on the bottom if you prefer clicking on things, but I usually just search for it. And there's also a shortcut for this by default if you want to use that. In this switcher, you can obviously switch branches. So I can select a branch like develop, hit the right arrow key and do checkout to switch to that other branch. You can also favorite branches, which is exciting. So if you use some branch a lot, for example, the origin develop branch is something you might want to reference a lot. So you might want to rebase on that a lot, or just compare changes to that, or something like that. Then you can also favorite these by hitting the star icon here on the left. So now if I close the dialog and I open it again, you'll see that it's going to be the top branch under remote branches. And you can also favorite local branches if that's what you want to do. Okay, so we've seen that we can do fetch from here. What else can we do? We can, of course, update our project, which means pulling changes from the tracking branch of whatever branch we're currently on. So pulling the changes from remote that are on the tracking branch. That's actually also a very basic feature. So it has a button up here on the toolbar, which is update project. It also has the Control-P shortcut. And here again, you can choose whether you want to merge those or rebase onto the changes that are on remote. Very similar action to updating the project is just pulling changes. So if you invoke pull, again, from action search, for example, that's also going to pull from the tracking branch by default. But you can also remember that you can pull from any remote branch. So if you want the changes from some other feature branch or whatever other branch, you can pull the changes from that branch into your current one as well. And it's worth noting that Android Studio has these options available that you could also specify in the command line. So for example, if you want to pull, but you want to make sure that no merge commit is created, you could enable FF only, and you would get that effect from it. All right. I think that's all. Oh, one more feature. So one more feature that I tend to use with Action Search, you can type in Annotate, which invokes the current file Annotate with git blame action. So basically, this toggles git blame for whatever file you have open in the editor. And if I enable that, you'll see that this blame information appears on the left-hand side in the gutter next to the line icons. So this tells me what the last modification time of each line in this file was, and also shows who the author of that commit was. You can, of course, customize this by right-clicking, and here you have a bunch of view options on coloring, how to display names, and what info to display exactly. And you can also do things like copy that revision, or, for example, you can show that specific commit in the Git log easily. You can also left-click on one of these, which just opens up all of the affected files in that revision. So here, for example, I left-clicked on the line where the room version number is at the moment, and I can see from these changes that this was a new file that was created in that commit. So if I want to find out where the version number came from, I can find the previous dependencies file that was deleted. I can always hit Control-D on this to show the def view. And I can actually keep diving with annotating with history. So you can always just left click the gutter. You can choose annotate with git blame, and it will yet again show you where these changes come from. So I could left click again, see the next commit that changed this file, and so on and so on. So this can be a really powerful way of diving into history, even if you need to dive through different files as you're going down because code has been moved around. All right. Next up, I want to showcase a plugin really quickly, which you probably want to install if you're working with Git, which is called Gitbox. This is all one word, no spaces. That's important if you want to search for it and install it from the plugins marketplace. After you install this, you can find its settings under version control and Git toolbox. And I only want to highlight a few small things that it does that are really useful. You can discover the rest on your own. So most importantly, I think it has this Autofetch feature, which will just run a git fetch command periodically, and also on branch switches if you want. So this makes sure that whenever you open the Git log, you'll have pretty much always a up-to-date view of whatever is on remote. So if you never fetch your Git project, you will not have a good idea of what other have been doing and what has been happening in your repository. So this is a good way to not have to remember to refetch the repo and just have it happen automatically. Another thing that Toolbox can do is add Git information in a lot of different places within the IDE. So for example, I have all of these checkboxes here that are enabled, which are some status bar decoration. So one of these is, I don't know if you can see this highlight very well, but next to these smiley faces on the right, this up-to-date section in the status bar. So this is a small Git stat widget, which shows you if you're up to date with the remote branch or if you're ahead or behind by any commits. And then next to it, there's a blame information, which if I go through the different lines of this file, you see that that blame info in the bottom right corner continuously changes. That again is just git blame, so it shows you who last modified the file. And if you click it, you can take a look at the commit in the git log. You can copy the revision, or you can take a look at all of the affected files from that commit. All right, I think that's everything I wanted to cover as far as browsing the current history goes. Now let's make some actual changes and see how we can manage those and what we can do with them. So I'm going to go back to my feature branch, and we're going to do a bunch of different changes here. I'm going to go to the dependencies file, and just to make simple changes, I'm going to do some version bumps. So I'm going to bump compose. I'm going to bump compose view model to newer versions. I'm also going to go and bump Kotlin to the latest version. And because I've done that, I actually already know that I'm going to break the project in a very specific way. So I have to jump into the middle of our code and fix this error here, which is that I was using an opt-in annotation on a constructor parameter, and that has to be on a property. So I'm just going to fix that because it's required for the Kotlin version bump. And since I've bumped Kotlin, I'm also going to go ahead and bump our Docker version so that they match. So yeah, I think that's good enough for some basic changes here. Note that as I'm changing things in the repository, and because I'm in a Git repo, you'll see these markers on the left-hand side next to the line numbers, which are blue if you've changed the lines. You can click this to view the history, so to look at the previous state of that line. And if I introduce some new lines here, you'll see that those are marked with green. And if I remove some lines, then those produce these triangular markers that show that something has been cut from there. And again, you can click these as well to take a look at what was removed. You can also always copy the things that show up here in these pop-ups. So there's a copy icon for that. And you can always roll back those changes, which also has a shortcut. So if you're just here with the cursor, you can do Ctrl-Alt-Z to undo whatever changes you have pending in the repo. Let's keep moving changes. So, or let's keep making changes. Next, I'm gonna search for Kotlin compiler version, which is a Gradle setting that is no longer required if you're using Compose. So I'm just gonna use that for some more changes. So I'm gonna remove that in 2 separate files. And as a last change, again, I'm just producing changes here so that we can commit them later on. We have these 2 classes which are deprecated and also unused in the project. So I'm just going to grab these and I'm going to delete both of them. And just so that Android Studio is happy, I'm just going to do a Gradle sync. Okay, so now we've done a bunch of changes and we're ready to commit them. Let's take a look at all of the changes first. So if I hit Alt-9 and I open the Git window, where I'm going to close the new tabs that I've opened previously. So within the Git window, if I go to the Local Changes tab, I will now see the 6 files in total where I've made different changes. I modified 4 of them, which are the blue ones, and I've removed the 2 gray ones entirely. You can group the changes here if you want to have a better view. So right now, however many files I've changed, even if I change hundreds of them, it would just be a flat list of all of the file names, which is not practical in all cases. So there's this icon here, which is group by, and you can choose to group by directory, module, or even both if you want to. So a directory-based grouping would look something like this. So each directory would be its own toggleable item in this list. And it would give you a slightly better view of your changes. You can also group by module. So that's something that you might want to use often because in a lot of cases, you want to make sure that you're only changing files in given modules. And you can also group by both. So in this case, under the module, the directories would show up as well. This is up to you to control, and there's like no good way of doing this. This is up to preference, and depending on how many things you've changed. This same view toggle is available in the log as well. So if you're here in the logs, for example, you can see that you can also choose the grouping here. So I could ungroup here. It's the same icon, and I could choose whether I want directory, module, or both of these groupings. Okay, so we have these changes. If I hit Control K, or again, toolbar icon for committing, So if I hit Control K, which is an obvious shortcut because K is for commit, then I get this commit dialog where on the top I can review all of my changes. I can actually select which of these changes I want to include in the commit. So I could just uncheck entire files or entire folders. Or for example, in the dependencies file where we've made multiple changes, I could come here on the bottom and just uncheck an individual change so that that specific change is not included in the commit. I also get to specify the commit message. In this case, we did really like random changes. So it's going to be something like, I don't know, improve project for now. And there are also some commit options here on the right that are worth checking. You pretty much just set these once and then use those, but it's worth making sure that you have these configured right. So there is code analysis, which will show you if you've introduced any new warnings or errors with the changes. There's check to do, which will warn you if you've created new to-dos. And some really useful options are formatting code and optimizing imports when you run your commit so that you like don't check in unformatted code to the repository. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. So we're just going to commit all of this. And now if we go to the log, you'll see that this new commit is here. And of course, all of our changes that we've made are in there. And after this, we could push this, which is Control-Shift-K. So after you use Control-K for committing, it's Control-Shift-K to push. And I don't have a remote branch for this right now, so it shows me that I would be creating a new branch, and I could hit push to actually do this and push these changes to the remote. I could also force push from here, which is worth knowing about. So if you've done some changes that modified commit history and you are sure that you want to override that on the remote, you can choose the force push option here, and it will do that. I'm not going to push this for now, though, because I actually have the real remote of our real repository set up for this demo. Okay, so I've created this commit, and I just put a lot of unrelated changes on there. So let's start editing our history and make this nicer. So first of all, I want to undo this commit. I don't want to revert it because then I would just have more commits that show that I've reverted these changes. Instead, I just want to remove this commit from history, but I want to keep the changes. So the way to do that is to right-click the previous commit, and I'm going to reset the current branch to here, here meaning the previous commit. Here I can choose how I want to do that reset. If I were to do a hard reset, I would drop the last commit in the list, and I would also lose all of the changes that are in there. So that's not what I want to do. Instead, I'm gonna do a soft reset, which is already selected. So a soft reset will move the head of the branch back to the commit that was selected, but it will keep all of the changes in the file system. So if I look at my files, I will now see that the changes I've made are, again, just pending changes. And if I go to local changes, then they are also still there. Now, to organize your changes better than just making changes and then committing everything all at once, or perhaps opening the commit dialog, unselecting things, selecting things, and like trying to commit just a part of your changes, a better way to do this is by using something called change lists. You're actually always using change lists if you're using Android Studio's Git integration, but it's easy to miss this. So by default, everything is on something called a default change list, and then you can create new ones. So I can right-click here, select new change list, and I can create one, for example, for update Kotlin to 1.5.31. And once I have that, I can move some changes to that list from the default one. So this change, for example, was related to updating the Kotlin version. So I can just grab this file and I can drop it onto the other change list. Or in the dependencies file, there are multiple changes. But for example, the change here, which is the Kotlin version bump, is supposed to be on the other change list. So I can right click here, choose move to another change list. I get to select here and I can move just that single change. You can also move things around from the editor on the top. So if I click on one of these changes in the gutter here next to the line icons, I can always just switch what change list that's on. So I can move the Docker version bump as well to the newly created change list. And you'll notice that changes that are in the currently active change list are these full color blue things on the side here. And anything that's on other change lists that are not active are marked with these outlined like blue markers so that you can differentiate between them. All right, so that's one unit of change that are related to each other. These deletions are also basically one change, so I can just right-click, move to another change list. And even though I don't have a list for this yet, I can just create one by typing in the name. So this would be, I don't know, remove unused use cases, for example. It shows a new badge telling me that I'm going to be creating a new change list, but that's okay. And I can keep doing this. So I can grab these two changes and create a new change list from them, which would be remove, Kotlin compiler version options. Actually didn't manage to move them to that. Okay. And then finally, this change is the compose version bumps. So I'm going to move that as well. And it's going to be update compose to 105. So now I've sorted all of my pending changes into 4 different change lists, which all describe what the changes are. And if I want to continuously work with these, for example, if I want to put some more things onto the compose change list, I can make this active by right-clicking and setting active change list, or just hitting Control space on it, which also does the same thing. So it will jump to the top and it will be highlighted with the bold font showing that it's active. I can also see from the sidebar here that this change is on the current change list. And if I want to make some more changes that are compose related, for example, this one, then because I have this change list selected, it's going to end up on this list automatically. Okay, so now that we have some change lists, if I hit Control K, you'll see that the commit dialog will open to commit just a single change, which is on my currently active change list. So that's actually populated up here. You can also switch to other lists if you want to commit those, but by default, the active one will pop up. And importantly, the commit message will be pre-filled with the name of the change list. So if you're doing work in Studio and you're working on different things, if you create change lists that have nicely worded names, then it's going to become very easy to commit them, because you just make that change list active, or you select it, you hit Control K, and you'll get this commit dialog, which is ready to commit. So I have nothing to do here except to hit Control Enter, and that will actually perform the commit. I can also do this for this change list, for example. So again, I could make this active, or I can just hit Control K on it, and then the commit dialog will open to that change list. And again, just Control Enter, just confirming that I want to commit that. Studio is also helpful enough to clean up these change lists for you if you want. So if something became empty and it's not active, it will ask you if you want to remove it. So I'm just going to hit space and accept that I will remove that. And if I do something like make the default change list active again, then I can also clean up the compose change list just like that. Okay, so before I commit these 2 change lists as well, so of course we've already committed these 2 things that we see in the logs now. Before I commit these 2 as well, I want to show you something which is really cool if you're collaborating with others. So you can take one of these change lists and you can right-click and copy them to the clipboard as a batch file. You can actually create a real actual file as well. So you could put these changes into a file and you could share that file with others. But you can also just do it through the clipboard, which is a lot quicker. So if I copy that, change this to the clipboard, and let's say that I open a Scratch file so that I can just paste from my keyboard, you'll see that I've ended up with the contents of the change list on my clipboard. So it just shows this git diff of what's part of the change list. So this version bump and this version bump, and also like this fix for the property annotation. So this is just a plain text description of all of the changes in this list. And the nice thing about this is that you could share this with someone else. So if I were to roll back these changes and maybe even delete the change list, and I received this from someone else, maybe they just sent it over chat or something, I can do apply patch either from a file or from the clipboard. And that will open this dialog where I get to receive those changes and put them into my project. So this was, what was this? Update Kotlin to 1.5.31. And this is, again, through change lists. So I could put this on an existing change list, or I can just type in the name of a change list to create a new one. So if I hit OK, I will now have recovered these. So you could do the same thing with colleagues. If you want to give some temporary changes to them, you could just copy it through the clipboard, send it to them, and they could apply it in Studio like this. Another thing you can do, let's say that I don't want these changes from this change list to be in the project because I want to work on something else. I don't want these to affect the project, so I don't want them to be present in the file system, but I will want to get back to them later and I don't want to lose them. And what I can do for that is I can right-click and choose to shelve these changes. This opens a dialog which is very similar to committing. I'm just going to confirm that I actually want to shelve all of these. And I'm going to end up in a new tab within the Git window here, which is called Shelf. So changes that are on the shelf are not in your current file system. So if I go to one of these build Gradle files, I will now find that this line that's removed in these changes is actually still present here. So the changes were undone in the file system, but they are kept here in this change list. I can, of course, always just hit Control D on these to actually confirm what are the changes are in that file. And of course, the change list has disappeared from local changes, but I can move this back at any time. So I can right-click this, I can do unshelve, and if I do that, it's gonna restore the change list from the shelf, just like that. And I can also clean up the shelf by just hitting delete, and Android Studio is even nice enough to keep the deleted shelf contents around for a while, so you can also just clean that up if you want to. Something else that's useful about shelving is that if you put something on the shelf, that's actually gonna end up in the .idea folder. So if you check out the idea folder, there's a shelf folder under there, and it's gonna have all of the things that you've shelved within the Git panel in, of course, the same patch format that you were using previously to copy a change list to your clipboard. So you could put changes on the shelf and you could potentially commit this into version control because it's in the idea folder. So you could say modify some files locally with some temporary changes. And instead of committing it to the repo, you could shelve them, commit the shelf to the repository, and then your colleagues could also unshelve those temporary changes. For example, if you need that for testing some new feature that you've created, that can be a quite useful way of sharing some changes. You can also, by the way, just drag and drop things between local changes and shelf. So if I grab this shelf, I can drag it back onto local changes, which will create a change list from it. And if I grab a change list, I can drag it onto the shelf, which will remove the change list and just put those changes onto the shelf. So this is a really, really seamless thing, and it works really nicely with change lists. Okay, let me commit these two as well. So I'm going to commit this, again, just using the message that's based on the name of the change list, and I'm going to do that again. You might think that you never work on multiple things at a time, so you don't really need change lists. It still might be useful. So for example, if you want to do something like just temporarily change something in your code. So let's say that I want to test our SDK, but I want to disable the offline integration in our sample app because I don't want caching to mess things up for me. If I want to do that, I would probably do something like this. I would come to the initializer and I would disable the offline functionality. And if this lives on my default change list, if I make other changes as well, I might accidentally commit all of those together. So even if you don't work on a lot of things at the same time, you might want to do something like create a temp change list that you can throw things onto, which you never make active. And that way you avoid the possibility of accidentally committing something. So this kind of temp change list is something that I almost always have in my projects for changes that I only want to have locally because I need it for some kind of testing. And I'm going to just clean that up real quick. All right, we're getting into the last part of this talk, which is going to be looking at how we can edit our Git history. So we've made a bunch of changes in the Git repo, and now I want to fix some of these commits because I'm still not quite happy with them. So first of all, whenever we do something like bump a version number, we tend to also include something about that in our changelog. So to do that, I'm going to go to the changelog, and I'm going to say, updated Kotlin to 1.5.31 so that our users know about it. Now, if I were to create a commit with this, that would create a new commit on top of the existing one, and I would really want to just include this change in this previous commit that also performs the actual version bump in the dependencies file. So if I want to do that, I can start committing and I can use the amend commit option on the top right, which will just put the changes that I've currently made onto the previous commit, so the last commit of the branch. As you can see, it also pre-filled the commit message so that it matches the message of the previous commit. If I wanted to, I could modify this message, and then the message would change for the existing contents as well. If you ever lose a commit message and you want to reuse it, by the way, there's this history icon here, which is also available with Control-M, that you can use, and you can browse the recent commit messages that you've used. So that can be useful. So I have amend checked, so I'm just going to hit commit now, and you'll see that my latest commit will be updated so that it now not only includes the dependency version bump, but also the changelog entry. What if I want to modify a commit that's somewhere deeper in my history? So for example, what if this commit has a message that I want to fix because there's some problem with it, I want to make it more descriptive, like whatever it might be. I can always right click and use, where is it? I can use edit commit message to do that. Also, there's a shortcut for this, which is just F2. So you get this dialog, and you can, just revert the commit, hit Control Enter, and it will magically change the name of the existing commit in the middle of your history. Let's do some more changelogs as examples. So what if I want to add a changelog change for this compose version bump? So again, I want to notify users about this. For this, we're going to need a more powerful feature, which is called interactive rebasing. If I click interactive rebase, I will get a dialog that will include all commits from that point, where I right-clicked in the logs, to the current point in time. And I get to do basically any kind of editing on these commits that I want to by using this dialog. So I could, for example, drag around some commits to reorder them. And if I click Start Rebasing now, you'll see that these two commits have now been swapped around. Or I can do an interactive rebase again. I can click one of these commits and use this pause icon to stop to edit my history at that point. So if I do start rebasing, you'll now see that I'm going to be taken back in time to right after this commit. So now I could do something like update compose to 105. I could commit that. So update changelog with, compose bump. And if I create that commit will now be the next one after the one where we've previously stopped. And if I now continue the rebase, which I can do either through this dialog where I can hit continue, or if I manage to lose the dialog, I can always just open the branch switcher and hit continue rebase there. Then all of the rest of the commits are also going to be replayed on top of what I already have. You might have some conflicts here. So for example, here I modified the same changelog file. So now I have to fix the conflict with Android Studio's, again, amazing diffing tools and merging tools. And if I continue there, you'll see that now there is this new commit, which was created just a minute ago in the middle of our history. What if I don't want this to be a separate commit from the previous one? Again, I just want these two changes to be in the same commit. I can do another interactive rebase, and I can select these commits, and I could either squash these or I can do a fix-up. So a fix-up will just put the changes from any subsequent commits to the commit on top. So it will just keep the commit message of the top one, and it will put all of the changes from this commit into that first commit. So if I run the rebase, you'll now see that the second commit has disappeared, and all of the changes are now part of this single commit. But you could also, for example, take a bunch of commits, and let's say we grab these 3 commits, which are all part of just upgrading the room version. So I could right-click these, and instead of doing a fix-up, I could do a squash. So this squash action is available from here in the Git log, or I could, again, interactively rebase, select the commits there, and use squash from there. These are the same actions. It's usually just easier to do it without going through the interactive rebase dialog. So squashing is a bit different from fix-up. Here, all of the commit messages are kept by default. So the first one is going to become the message, and the rest are going to go into the description of the commit. But you can also edit this manually. So I can move this one up to be the commit message, and I can move the rest to be the commit description. And as you can see now, all of the changes from those 3 different commits are merged into just a single commit. And here's the edited title as well as description for that. So previously, I came here and I created a new commit, and then I did the fix-up to modify just this commit. Let's do that in a smarter way for this one. So you can actually just do an interactive rebase. you can stop to edit at any point in time. And if you do that, you can also amend the commit. So here we're now on the update room version commit. So that was the last commit before what we're doing now. I can do update the room to, whatever version it is. And instead of creating a new commit here in the middle of history, I can do an amend on the previous commit. So now if I do that, then this modification in the changelog file after I continue the rebase will just be part of the existing commit. So again, you can really, really easily do this. Just jump back into some point in history and put some more edits into your existing commits. And as you've seen, you can also just, just do pretty much anything here. So in the interactive rebase dialog, you can squash some commits like that. You can reorder some others if you want to. You can also use this to reword and modify the commit message. If you have a commit that you actually don't need in that branch, you can use drop, which will just remove it. And you can prepare all of these in a single rebase if you really want to. And then if you hit start rebasing, then it's going to perform all of those actions at once for you. And you might have to resolve conflicts again, which I'm just going to skip for now. So yeah, this is a really powerful tool, and you can really freely edit your history with this. I think we're almost running out of time, but I'll show you one more final thing. So let's say that I wanted to get just this commit into develop. So I want to open a new PR that merges this commit that removes these two files into the develop branch. I don't want to have all of these changes merged and reviewed. I just want this to be on a new branch. So a really quick way to do that is to go to branches, go to develop, and create a new branch from selected. So a new branch from develop. For example, remove unused use cases. And now I have a branch that's down here, which matches the develop branch. And I can just right click the commit that I want to put on that branch and choose cherry pick, which will take that single commit and put it onto that I've created. So this way I could push this branch, open a PR against develop, and only these changes would be part of that branch. And you can also cherry pick multiple commits at the same time. So if I want a new branch where I want to just do the version updates that I had in this long, complicated feature branch, I could grab just the version update commits from that. I could do a cherry pick, and now I would have a fresh branch that only has those 3 commits, and it starts straight from develop. So yeah, Git in Android Studio, really, really powerful. To summarize, you can do basic things. You can, of course, view your logs. You can commit, push. You can pull changes. You can do a lot of these things through Action Search with Control-Shift-A. You can manage local changes, whether you have a lot of different workflows running at the same time, or you just have some things that you don't want to commit and you need one of these stamped change lists. So those are really powerful. You can also use them to share things with others through patch files or through the shelf. And finally, you have all of the actions that are available on right-click here in the Git log, as well as interactive rebasing specifically, which are a really, really powerful way of editing your Git history. And yeah, I think that's a wrap. I do want to shout out one more thing. So if you go to the talks page of my website, you'll find a couple of resources for this talk, including, if I can find it, this article, which is the top link on this page, which is all about managing your local work. So this expands a bit more on change lists, compares them to Git stashing, for example, and is just an awesome resource in general. And that's it.